Good evening, participants and esteemed guests. A warm welcome to session 2 of CyberShield 3.0. Today, we embark on a thought-provoking journey into the heart of cybersecurity with a panel discussion on the crucial topics of cyber risk prevention and the future of cybersecurity. In this era of rapid digital transformation, where technology intertwines with every aspect of our lives, the significance of cybersecurity cannot be overstated. We are honored to have a distinguished panel of experts who will share their insights, experiences, and visions for cyber prevention strategies and the evolving landscape of cybersecurity. I encourage each and every one of you to actively participate with our esteemed panelists, ask questions, and contribute to the collective exploration of securing our digital future. Without further ado, let's kick off this session with the panel introductions. It is my pleasure to introduce our first panelist, Dr. Harinder Fernando, an assistant professor in computer systems engineering at SLIIT. With 14 years of experience in tertiary education, he is a seasoned expert in networking, cybersecurity, and machine learning. Dr. Fernando holds a PhD in networking, cybersecurity, and IoT, and has supervised over 100 undergraduate and postgraduate dissertations. His leadership extends to academic administration, curriculum development, and successful involvement in transnational academic partnerships. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Harinder Fernando.
Hello.
Let me introduce our second panelist, Mr. 𝚙𝚋𝚎𝚔 from our first session, who is a senior lecturer and cybersecurity researcher at SLIIT with over 40 publications in global conferences. He's a cybersecurity preacher actively shaping curricula and serving as a board member of ISACA Sri Lanka. Mr. 𝚙𝚋𝚎 is the project coordinator of //com Tech Kids cybersecurity program, working towards raising awareness among the younger generation. His diverse background, starting as a network engineer and transitioning into academia, brings practical insights to the cybersecurity landscape. Let's welcome Mr. 𝚙𝚋𝚎𝚔, whose wealth of knowledge will enrich our discussion on cyber risk prevention and the future of cybersecurity.
Hello, nice to see everyone again.
The third panelist for today is Mr. 𝚤𝚢𝚘 𝚤𝚌𝚘, who is currently the head of the Industry Engagement Unit and a senior lecturer at SLIIT. With 14 years of dedicated service, Mr. 𝚤𝚤 is a seasoned expert in the field of cybersecurity education. Throughout his impressive career at SLIIT, he has actively contributed to program coordination, postgraduate course coordination, and managerial roles, showcasing a commitment to advancing cybersecurity education. Please join me in welcoming Mr. 𝚤𝚢𝚘 𝚤𝚌𝚘. We look forward to gaining valuable insights from his extensive experience in our discussion.
Hope you all can hear me. Hello,
Yes,
everyone. It's nice to see you all.
And finally, let me introduce our discussion moderator, Mr. Anuradha Ranavira, the event co-vice chair of CyberShield 3.0 and a committee member of ISACA student group of SLIIT. He is currently pursuing his cybersecurity degree at Curtin University, Colombo, and is a certified professional deeply committed to the field. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Anuradha Ranavira, our discussion moderator for this session.
Hello, Mithila, and thank you, Mithila. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's kickstart the discussion on cyber risk prevention and future of cybersecurity with Dr. Harinder Fernando, Mr. 𝚑𝚋𝚐𝚔 and Mr. Amida Nuwan Senaratne. My first question goes to Dr. Harinder Fernando. Sir, can you explain us how can we strengthen the cybersecurity for IoT devices, and what are the key challenges and best practices in safeguarding data and ensuring network integrity in expanding world of IoT?
Of course. Let me thank everyone for inviting me to this panel. So when we look at IoT, the biggest challenge is that there are significant differences in IoT systems and more traditional systems that we are used to securing. So from my perspective, there are two main differences. One is there are fundamental architectural differences in IoT systems. For example, traditional cybersecurity is mostly kind of founded on the concept of perimeter defense. That means you look at your systems like a house, right? If you have a house and you want to defend it, what you do is you build a wall and you build gates. And that is where most of your defenses are. And that is how traditional systems have been defended from, early 2000s or even before that. We have an internal network, a LAN, and we have an external network, a WAN. And majority of our defenses are focused on where these two meet, which is where we have our firewalls, where we have our gateways, routers, proxies. All of that is defended and managed there. Now, this has worked very well in the traditional context where we have that separation, where we have a dedicated LAN with our internal network and our internal, infrastructure, and we have a separate external network. Now, with IoT, this concept completely changes because IoT is about, hundreds or thousands of devices that are out there. And a majority of the time, this architecture doesn't have a set perimeter. So what happens is perimeter defense, our traditional perimeter defense approach cannot be applied to IoT networks. When we try to apply it, it doesn't work because IoT is more peer-to-peer based than centralized. So all our firewalls, all our centralized, VPN-based technology, all of that becomes kind of ineffective in this kind of architecture. So we have to rethink about network security from a ground-up situation when it comes to IoT. And then when it comes to things like smart cities or, industrial IoT, again, the sheer scale of those networks mean traditional approaches, traditional firewalls, traditional VPNs cannot manage with that scale. So again, we can't use the traditional approach. So that is the first challenge. That is the biggest challenge. So we have to rethink our design. We have to rethink our approach to security from a new perspective. Now, the second challenge is now we remove perimeter defense. What happens is now we need a way to individually defend each of the devices, which we normally don't, right? We have the concept of edge security where we have maybe end device security. We have end device, firewalls or small firewall, anti-malware, anti-phishing, all that is there, but they are not comprehensive. Now, once we change that, we have to move all those defenses over to the devices. Then the second challenge comes into play. Because normally when we think of computing, we think of laptops, we think of smartphones, we think of servers. All of these kind of devices, which are again the more traditional IT infrastructure, if you look at the resources available, they are exponentially or much greater than what is available on an IoT device. You compare a smartphone with a Raspberry Pi, right? You can see the amount of computational power, the amount of bandwidth, the amount of RAM, the amount of battery. all of that is significantly greater. So that's when the second challenge comes. Now the architecture changed, we need to rethink, we need to take our defenses to the devices. But when you go to defend the devices, we understand we don't have the resources. So even if we manage to take a normal firewall, which we designed and built to run on a server or run on a laptop, and we try to directly implement that onto a Raspberry Pi or even something lesser, obviously it's a huge issue. It will not work. Even if it works, it's going to significantly impact the other capabilities of that device. It might be able to secure itself, but it won't be able to do the other work it's supposed to do. So what happens here is, now not only do we have to rethink the architecture and how we approach security from a ground up perspective, we also need to rethink of the individual components that are part of our security or of our defense. We have to rethink about the cryptographic primitives. We can't use AES or RSA. We can, but it's not practical, right? We can't use a normal machine learning model that has been developed and trained and designed to run on a mobile phone or a laptop and try to put it on Raspberry Pi, especially when that inference, that machine learning algorithm has to run maybe 10,000 times a second because of the number of packets that is coming to the Raspberry Pi, because that doesn't change. The networking requirements don't change because you are not a laptop. It has to be still connected 24/7. It has to still face and defend against the same type and same amount of attacks that a laptop has to defend against. So you can imagine the challenge. Not only do we have to relook at our network security or our security architecture or security design, we need to rethink and scope each individual piece. Components, protocols, all of that has to be changed. They have to be much lighter weight. So you have much less resources to provide the same security. This is a massive challenge. This is where a lot of companies are running into problems. This is where a lot of the challenges are currently. It is not about how we secure the IoT device. It is how do we secure the IoT device given the constrained resources available. And actually, it is very interesting because what I'm seeing is there is kind of a return to something that happened about 15, 20 years ago, right? Early 2000s to mid 2000s, we had a concept of wireless sensor networks. This was actually more resource constrained than IoT devices. And what happened was there was an incredible push on how to manage to do the same kind of networking or same security functions in these wireless sensor networks as on normal infrastructure. With the change and with the emergence of IoT, which was the development from wireless sensor networks, the focus on that changed because now we had significantly more powerful edge devices than what was used in wireless sensor networks. But what happened was in the next decade, from 2010 to 2020, the cybersecurity landscape changed. Threat became much more prominent. They became a lot more evident. Things like advanced persistent threats, ransomware, botnets, IoT botnets all rose to prominence. And again, security became a major challenge even in the relatively higher resources of IoT defenses. So what I'm seeing is actually now a lot of risk to what was done in mid to late 2000s and trying to adapt those mechanisms to work better, or those techniques to work better.
Of data security in this dynamic landscape.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me again. So I think it's a very pertinent question as well as a timely question because a lot of tech giants are investing heavily on quantum computing, as you know. So if anyone is unaware of what quantum computing is, it's basically we are moving from bits that we are quite familiar with into a qubit environment where our day-to-day activities are going to be mainly based on qubits, and then suddenly everything's going to be faster and more powerful. And there are research level activities that are happening around the world with quantum computing, although it is not currently it's not domesticated as of yet or used in a prevalent manner throughout the world. So obviously what you will see is still research and experimental research. But quantum computing, what it will do is obviously make everything faster, right? So everything's faster as well as more powerful with respect to computational capabilities. So how does this affect security? So I think I will start from the question that you pointed towards cryptography. So cryptography is basically like the cornerstone of cybersecurity, right? So every security solution that is currently implemented is based on a solid layer of encryption per se, right? So encryption is basically the science of making data unreadable to unauthorized parties, which we touched upon yesterday in our session. These cryptographic protocols, some of you who are aware of this already would know it breaks into two main categories, right? Symmetric and asymmetric categories. Symmetric, the most modern cryptographic encryption algorithms on symmetric arena is quite safe. As per se, I mean, like, even if you think about quantum computing becoming a reality, it would not be possible to straight away break an AES 256 encryption mechanism, right? So that is probably the global standard at the highest level, symmetric encryption. And even if it is capable of breaking it, we can very simply improve it to make it AES 512-bit long. So suddenly it becomes exponentially difficult to break. But the biggest challenge that the cryptography is facing in front of quantum computing is the asymmetric cryptography domain, right? So that is the other branch, which is also very, very crucial for all the protocols we are using on a daily basis, including HTTPS, TLS, SSL, network level security of IPsec and all those things. All these VPN establishments are done using these protocols. This asymmetric domain is heavily reliant on what we call a mathematical problem, right? So this problem is actually something anyone can solve as long as they have enough computational power, right? So I would give you a very quick example. We have an algorithm called RSA, which Dr. Harinder referred to. This RSA algorithm is reliant on a mathematical problem called a very simple problem called integer factorization problem, right? And then we have another very famous asymmetric algorithm called Diffie-Hellman key exchange, which you might have heard of. This is heavily reliant on a mathematical problem called discrete logarithm problem, right? So this logarithm problem, I think most of you remember from your childhood, where the problem is so hard, you guys had to carry a separate book to solve the logarithm problem, right? We called it the logbook, right? So based on these mathematical problems, we built these asymmetric algorithms that helps us as the foundation of current crypto protocols, right? Now, the problem with quantum computing is suddenly when computers get exponential computational power, these problems become like a piece of cake. You can just solve it within a matter of seconds, right? Depends on the power. It might even be less than a second. So suddenly the asymmetric part of cryptography falls apart, right? If it falls apart, all our algorithm stacks, right? So all protocol stacks, including TLS, SSL, HTTPS, IPsec, all these secure protocols, they are no longer secure, right? So I know now this might scare some of you, right? This might actually bring a little bit of fear into your minds. Research work is currently ongoing on how to be quantum resistant with respect to cryptography. So to be quantum resistant, of course, we have to make sure our algorithms are much harder to break. So mathematical problems that we used in the past obviously will be obsolete. So therefore, can we introduce new type of problems, right? So the research is ongoing, but there are quantum resistant algorithms coming up. People are working on it. So there is a concept called quantum key distribution that is currently being tested. This is based on a very, very simple principle in quantum computing proposed by Bennett and Bassard in 1992. So it's such an old concept, but still used for this development of the quantum key distribution concept. And then there is a new branch of cryptography coming up called lattice-based cryptography, which is quite resistant against high computational capabilities. And another branch of cryptography, which is basically not a branch, I would say a byproduct of cryptography, is digital signatures that we use on a daily basis. So quantum resistant digital signature solutions are also being explored by researchers. One such example is this extended Merkle signature scheme that researchers are working on, which could actually work and eventually be resistant against quantum computing. So that is the good news. So don't worry, the world is not going to fall apart. However, the biggest challenge the community would be facing in the future is to standardize this, right? So how quickly can we standardize it? How quickly can we transition from a non-quantum world to a quantum world with respect to security? How quickly can we enforce this as a standard? How quickly can we ask people to stop using RSA or ask people to stop using the Diffie-Hellman key exchange and then move on to quantum resistant algorithms? So it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a major challenge. And it won't. Now, one good example why this is going to be challenging. Now, Dr. Harinder would agree with me, moving from IPv4 to IPv6 was a decade-long process, right? We are still doing it.
It's still not complete after
it's still not
13 years.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a decade-long process, and we are okay to do it because we have routers and network perimeter devices that are capable of doing that transition while without affecting people, without affecting our day-to-day activities. However, the challenge with cryptography is you can't wait 13 years, right? You can't wait 13 years for a cryptographic protocol to be standardized among all the users in the internet. That's not possible. So I guess there will be a time where the Internet Society, we have the Internet Society that governs some of these standardizations around the world, will have to come together and probably decide on a fixed time scale to solve all these issues. By that time, all these protocols will have to be standardized. And then with that comes few other problems, such as, how do we implement it? How do we integrate it to legacy systems? And how do we integrate it to, going back to what Dr. Harinder mentioned about IoT, right? So IoT is becoming prevalent, and then can we deal with IoT devices in the new environment? These are going to be major questions that need to be addressed in the coming few years with respect to quantum computing. So I hope I answered the question. We can go into technical details, but I think that gives a brief idea about the future of cryptography, as per se. Thank you.
Thank you for that insightful response, sir. Moving on to the third question. Mr. Amila, can you explain how important cloud security for business today and what key measures should be prioritized to protect data and applications in cloud, and how does it contribute to overall cybersecurity?
Right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having me for this session. Question is directed towards use of public cloud services. As we all know, like we have different deployment models when it comes to cloud. Now, even though we have a hype about this cloud computing, it's nothing new. We have been using this cloud computing for a very long time. Only thing is like mostly we were familiar with having clouds in our own premises, like what we call private clouds, right? And eventually we started like getting services from other companies to maintain our private cloud, which is called offsite private clouds. But now we are looking at many other deployment models, including this public cloud services. As an example, this cloud services offered by Google, uh, Amazon Elastic Cloud, Microsoft, right? And also we have community clouds as well as this hybrid clouds. And most of the organizations today use hybrid cloud deployment models. So they work with their private clouds, on-site to off-site private clouds, as well as they work with public clouds. because of many reasons, host easy accessibility, and also how easy it is to manage disaster recovery related aspects and all. Many organizations are going into public cloud services, right? And I'm sure that all of you are familiar with different service models being offered by these public cloud service providers. Now we all have experienced this software as a service model, where we use these applications like Office O365 and all, right? And they are basically the cloud consumers and customers have access to the applications being hosted in the cloud, basically hosted by the cloud service provider. So we have limited admin control there, where we can get our work done. And we also have this platform as a service model, where like everything that we need from the operating system to middleware is there, and we can develop applications on top of it and host it in the same platform, right? I'm sure that most of you are familiar with Google App Engine kind of applications. And we also have infrastructure as a service. Now there's a huge biasness towards this infrastructure as a service. Everybody wants to have a computing space with some computing power, where they can deploy the operating systems, middlewares, applications on top of it, right? And so this, as I said, this cloud computing is nothing new, but now there's a tendency to go more towards this public cloud services. And the question was how important is cloud security for businesses today. Now, it can be important for organizations due to many reasons. Now, if you are having your digital assets deployed in a cloud service, including your applications, data, and other services, there are certain requirements that you have to satisfy when you are running a business. One of the most important things is data protection, right? Now, a lot of businesses today store their sensitive business critical information in public clouds, such as like customer information, financial reports, and information about intellectual properties that they have, right? And if there's a breach, right, that can result in significant financial and reputation damage. Because of that, this cloud security is important for today's businesses in terms of data protection, and also there are regulatory compliances that we have to look into. Many industries have very strict regulations governing this protection of sensitive data. So if you look at financial industry, if you look at health information systems, so there are a lot of regulations coming in, right? So in different countries, they have different regulations and compliance requirements, but many of them have certain like things common when it comes to cloud computing and data protection, right? So as a result, these cloud security measures help businesses to comply with these regulations and avoid any legal consequences, right? And also, all businesses are worried about their business critical applications and services offered via these cloud services, right? Availability and uptime is a huge concern for them, right? So this one reason for going for cloud services is also to make sure that availability and uptime is better than having it within your own like private cloud or data center, right? So this because of that, these cloud services must be available and must be definitely reliable, right? So downtime due to security incidents or any other attacks or security problems can again lead to huge financial losses depending on the business, and disruption of business operations, which can have impacts on customers, right? And also when you talk about cloud security for nowadays businesses, there are certain risks involved in going into cloud services. Now, it's a multi-tenant environment. So multi-tenancy is one of the like characteristics of cloud with that, because many different organizations and individuals will be sharing same set of hardware to host different applications, solutions, data, and services. Right. So this so it's often involved with shared infrastructure, and these security measures are essential to prevent unauthorized access between different tenants on the same platform. So that is also something that we have to consider. And also data residency and privacy concerns can also be there, right? Many businesses may need to comply with specific data residency requirements. Now, if you look at European Union regulations and certain regulations applicable for certain industries in US, right? They have this very clear guidelines on data residency requirements. So you can't have your data in anywhere in the world, right? And when you go for a cloud service provider, that is one like problem that you will have to face. Sometimes depending on the cloud service provider, you might not even know where your data is going to be stored, right? So that arise certain legal concerns as well, right? So this because of that, this cloud security helps ensure that data is stored and processed in a process in compliance with the relevant legal aspects. So the laws and regulations established by the countries and relevant industries, right? So this is why this cloud security is important for nowadays businesses. And your second part of the question was, what are the key measures that we should prioritize when it comes to protecting data and applications hosted in cloud, isn't it? So in and also how it contributes to the overall cybersecurity. Now, there's no easy way of saying that these are the key measures. There may be many, depending on the nature of your like cloud deployments, type of services that you are running there, and type of data that you are storing in your cloud environment. But I can think of few things that you will have to prioritize in any type of cloud usage. One can be identity and access management. Obviously, when you are utilizing the service of a public cloud service provider, you will have to implement very robust identity and access management policies to control and monitor who access these cloud resources, right? So that usually includes a very strong authentication mechanisms. Also, you will have to consider applying least privilege access to users depending on the work that they're supposed to do utilizing these cloud resources. And also you'll have to regularly review these access permissions and all, right? And obviously we'll have to think about data encryption. We are not going to even trust the cloud service providers fully, right? So mostly you are going with public cloud service providers based on their reputation, isn't it? So when it comes to security, one thing that you consider always is how reputed this public cloud service provider is, right? Because there's no well-established framework or very easy set of metrics to look into to decide whether this cloud service provider has all the security you need, right? Because of that, data encryption is very important, and we don't know how even cloud service providers hire their employees, what kind of access they have into our data. There may be policies, procedures that we will have to initially go through. There are agreements that we'll have to come up with. But again, to be on safe side, always we heavily utilize data encryption services. Now, Mr. Kaving and Dr. Harindra already mentioned few things about data encryption. So, and so it's not only for data at rest. Now, when you're transferring data between your like applications and the cloud, you will have to consider utilized to do that, right? And mostly you are doing this through unsecure networks such as internet. If you are using public cloud service providers, obviously it's internet. Now on cloud, we have more control over that. We can decide whom to be hired to do what with these services and data, right? We have like admin access, we have more monitoring capabilities, but when it comes to cloud, it's totally different. And we are talking about a cloud environment used by many different users. So we don't get the luxury of having admin access and like other facilities to continuously monitor anything we want, right? Because of that, at least utilizing some level of regular auditing and monitoring is important for the security of cloud services, right? So any services that organizations offered by cloud service providers. So employing continuous monitoring, regular audits to detect and respond to security incidents promptly is important, right? And so when it comes to monitoring, it includes this monitoring use activities, activity logs, and system behaviors for anomalies as well, right? Because we can't like monitor maybe hardware infrastructure and other things, since it's like that capability is only available for the cloud service provider. And the last part of your question, now apart from these key measures that I have mentioned, there may be other things like security patching and updates. So you will have to focus on network security, like Dr. Harindra mentioned. You will have to have state-of-the-art network security controls implemented around your cloud services to make sure that you can protect your digital assets against this unauthorized access, malwares, and other network-based threats, right? And also you have to have incident response and disaster recovery capabilities implemented, obviously. Now, one thing that we lack in when it comes to cloud services is like we try to completely rely on disaster recovery facilities and other things available with the cloud service provider itself. But in certain occasions, we might have to consider having such things implemented with the support of maybe other cloud service providers or private clouds as well, right? So, and also it's important, now we always say one of the most important administrative controls is user awareness and training. So no matter whether you are using a cloud service or any other traditional way of doing things, so this employee training and user awareness is always important. So you'll have to educate employees about the security best practices when it comes to usage of these cloud services and all, and importance of adhering to the organization security policies, especially when these cloud services are utilized. And so the last part of your question was about contribution to the overall security. Now, if you have a very effective cloud security measures implemented, that will contribute to overall cybersecurity by providing a very comprehensive and integrated approach to protect data and applications. Now, since businesses are very increasingly relying on cloud services, it's important to consider all these threats, attacks, and other security concerns that can be there in cloud environments, right? And this having a very, I might say, very advanced strategy on implementing security for cloud is important. So this secure, because security of cloud environments becoming a very critical component of the broader security strategies of a organization. And also, if you have a well protected cloud infrastructure, that will enhance the overall security posture of the organization, and also that will assure things like confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your digital data and other important digital assets, right? So that will improve the trust of your customers and partners, and you will be able to demonstrate your commitment towards safeguarding sensitive information and assets. So you will get more businesses, you'll get more customers, you have more customer satisfaction. That will lead to a successful business action. So that is why cloud security is important. That is how it can contribute to like overall cybersecurity. So I hope I have answered all the questions that you have directed toward me.
Thank you for your insightful response. Your insights are very, very well, sir. Moving on to the fourth question, Dr. Harendra, in the age of increasing cyber threats, how can individuals and businesses best safeguard their sensitive data? What proactive measures can be taken to ensure data privacy and protect against potential cyber attacks?
Okay. So I'd like to discuss some of the new emerging threats for this, because over the past maybe decade or so, there has been a significant change in the cybersecurity landscape, especially the threat landscape. Now, I don't know if you guys are aware, but if you are in IT or even in industry, you should. Last year, the biggest kind of cyber threat was ransomware. And again, in kind of research done last year, by the end of last year, it was predicted that once again this year, the biggest damage or the biggest cyber threat would once again be ransomware. And it has become such a big issue that US actually had a conference specifically about ransomware, what's happening, how to protect itself, all that last year, which was kind of attended by the US president. So it has become that much of an issue. So let's try to understand why ransomware is such a big threat. What ransomware did was it changed the target population. That is my belief. Because before that, what happened was we had malware, we had different types of attacks, and most of the attacks were focused on either confidentiality or integrity. That means they either tried to steal information that was important, or they tried to change information that was important. Now, for majority of the people, majority of users, they really didn't have information worth stealing, or they were concerned with about being changed. For example, if you looked at me 2-3 years ago, or even now, I don't care if people log into my laptop and take whatever I have there and put it on the internet. I don't have secrets, right? Similarly, I'm not too concerned about losing, except for edits the information, right? So integrity and confidentiality, while they were not such a big concern, so what happened for a lot of malware and a lot of attackers, the target population was quite low. They had to attack businesses, they had to attack, high profile CEOs or, people at a certain standing for the attacks to actually have a financial return. Because even though a lot of movies and a lot of, news wants to say hackers do it for the fun, underlying concept is hackers do it to make money, right? They have to put in effort. So unless they can get money from doing what they do, they may do it once or twice, then they forget about it. So there was very little financial targets available to a hacker. Now, what ransomware did was it changed it, because everybody has information that is important to them. They might not worry whether it's exposed or whether it's changed. For example, I have wedding photos in my laptop, right? I don't care if somebody steals those and puts it on Facebook. I have put it on Facebook. But if somebody says, look, I'm going to delete them and you will not have it available ever again, that's a problem. I have pictures of my son, right? I have pictures of my father who has passed away. So what happens is with ransomware, the attack changed from attacking confidentiality or integrity, which only very few people were actually worried about, to attacking availability of data. And everybody is worried, because if you store something, if you save something, you want that. So what happened was ransomware completely changed the landscape. It changed from there being very few financial targets to everybody being a potential target, right? Now people can just write a ransomware, they can just expose it, they can release it into the wild, and every person that is impacted by it will potentially pay money. It's different levels, right? I may pay $10. A CEO might pay $1,000. But $10 when you have attacked 100,000 people is $1 million, right? So that is what
Dr.
ransomware did.
Harinder, if I can add something,
Sure.
I have a friend of mine who actually his profession was wedding photography.
Right.
And an entire PC worth of 3 weddings was affected by ransomware. So you can imagine the financial effect.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's what ransomware did. Ransomware is very simple. There's no huge thing. It's just basically a worm or a phishing attack where the payload encrypts the machine. There's nothing new technologically. There's no new ways of attacking the system. There's no new technologies. There's no new techniques. It is a combination of two very, very old mechanisms, either worms for automated or phishing for social engineering based attacks, and encryption, right? Again, decades old concept. But you combine them, you suddenly change the threat landscape. Rather than 1% of the population being a potential target, everybody in the world is a potential target. That is why ransomware skyrocketed to being the biggest threat in the last 2 years, and it will continue to be so. And the other thing is, with ransomware, now, there are people who have gone beyond you writing ransomware to spread themselves. You have people who have ransomware as a service, right? So companies can go and hire people to wear ransomware. They pay the guy who writes the ransomware, they rent it or they buy it, and then they go and release it and they get the money from the attack. So it has become like a supply chain, digital supply chain business, the ransomware landscape. Right. So now everybody has to worry about ransomware. Everybody has to worry about phishing attacks. Everybody has to worry about worms, because that's how the ransomware payload is delivered. Right. So that is one thing. Right. So that is how cybersecurity now everybody has to worry about it. The second kind of attack, again, I want to kind of maybe just talk about. I'm not going to go into details because it's highly technical. It's a very new kind of hardware-based attack, which is called side channel attacks. Hopefully, people in the field would have heard about things like Spectre and Meltdown, which became highly prominent 2 to 3 years ago, right? And these attacks were again significantly different from kind of old attacks, which were very common at least, right? There may have been these kind of attacks, but they would have been niche attacks, whereas Spectre and Meltdown became very wide, very common attacks. How were they different? These attacks were different because rather than attacking software or firmware, which was what majority of malware did, these were based off the architecture of the underlying hardware. Right? They looked at CPUs, how the architecture of the CPUs worked, and exploited that to mount attacks. Right? Just to explain very simply for people who are not aware, these exploited technique called, I think, branch-wise prediction. Right? That was used in CPUs to speed up CPUs. Basically, if you understand how it worked, CPUs, what they do is they kind of, now, for example, you have if loops. Sorry, not if loops, you have if statements in programming. If this, do this. If something else, do that. So what CPUs did was they would, in advance, they would possess both the kind of sides of the if statement. Right? So obviously only one would need to be executed, but in advance they would execute both and keep the kind of output ready. So regardless of what the user input was, it had already executed the calculations. But what happened was, now the underlying architecture of CPUs was done 20, 30 years ago, the x86 architecture, right? That has been the same for the last 30 years or so. Again, I'm not too sure. I'm not a hardware guy. So those days, cybersecurity wasn't an issue. So what happened was these branches were executed outside the normal software that had the security. So what happened was, again, you have to understand virtualization, how operating systems work. So there was security put into place, but these branch-wise predictions were done outside the operating system security, because even the operating system was not aware that the CPU was doing this. So what happened? People who knew hardware, who knew operating systems, who understood the architecture, decided, let's bypass the operating system and try to attack the CPU when it was doing these branch-wise predictions outside of sandbox, which the programs live in. And it worked. And the best part was, because this was outside all software, there was no way to remedy this at a software level, because this was outside the domain of even the operating system or even the firmware. This was kind of a bitwise code running, bit code running on the CPU decided this. And as you might know, Intel had to rewrite the bit code, and it was about a 10 to 12% hit on the performance of the CPU, because this was done to increase the performance. So the very moment you switch that code off, the bit code that was running on the CPU, massive hit on the architecture, right? And again, you could not do that at a software level. It took months. And now, coming to what Mr. Amila was talking about, these side channels attacks were then leveraged in cloud computing domains, in cloud computing environments, to kind of bypass multi-tenancy. And what happened was, Amazon and Google would be running on the same hardware, and the same bitwise predictions were running outside even running outside the hypervisors, which control the virtualization. So it was a major issue at data center level, because there were massive issues where basically fundamental kind of concepts such as sandboxing, privilege of information, execution tasks, all were compromised. And there was about 1.5 years where this was a major problem, and it has led to there being significant changes at the bit code of CPU architectures. But because a lot of these architectures were created 30, 40 years ago, before security was a major concern, are being found which still exploit the underlying bit code and the underlying kind of architecture of CPUs to come up with new vulnerabilities. So I think going forward, ransomware will mostly need user knowledge, right? That has to be the users. There are mechanisms, but you just have to be a lot more careful than you were. But things like side channel attacks, there's going to be a lot of new concepts, and there will have to be again changes at architectural level of how we build hardware and how we integrate hardware with software to bypass this. And that will again take some time. And during that time, there will be a lot of vulnerabilities and a lot of threat vectors that are available to malicious parties or threat actors to exploit.
Thank you, sir, for sharing the expertise. Moving on to next question. Mr. 𝐂𝐲𝐶𝐵, can you explain how do new cybersecurity laws and standards affect businesses and individuals? What steps are crucial for organizations to ensure compliance and reinforce cybersecurity in this changing cybersecurity environment?
Right. So that's a very timely question once again, because I think, as I've already mentioned, I think Dr. Harinder also touched upon this, because cybersecurity was not necessarily a discussion point at the inception of internet and at the inception of the whole boom of information technology. Now it has become a major discussion point. I would say one of the most important discussion points, the security aspect. So with that, obviously, the legal landscape and the regulatory landscape has also changed. And the biggest challenge, of course, the world is facing is this: the legal landscape is not perfectly harmonizing across the globe. It's different everywhere. So if you want to take the the timeline of it, I would say the European Union had referred to this with respect to cloud security. They had a head start with their general data protection regulation quite a few years ago. And the world followed suit, including the Western world, like the Northern American region, and then countries like Australia, and of course, various other regions. And countries like us, we of course lagged behind to a certain extent, and it took time for us to come up to a certain level. And to give you a context, 3 years ago, the only law that we had was Computer Crimes Act, which is quite outdated and it is almost unusable with the current technological landscape. However, 2022, we passed a bill in the parliament that is called the Personal Data Protection Regulation of Sri Lanka, which played sort of like it plays a very important role. We are still in the transition period, and the organizations in the country in Sri Lanka, they are given a grace period to adhere to this. So there is a time for us to move into that regulatory framework, but the laws are coming, which is really good to see. And cybersecurity bill of Sri Lanka is also being currently discussed in the parliament for quite some time now, trying to final version of it, and hopefully this year it will be passed and it will become a law as well. These are the legal landscape. So obviously this will affect hugely on businesses. To answer your question, how organizations and businesses will be affected by this is, of course, they will have to adhere to all these legal requirements, because they are legally mandated by a particular government, right? So that is a scenario would be what Mr. Amla mentioned in cloud computing architecture. So now not only cloud computing, if you are, for example, if you are a local business, but let's say if you're having a traveling agency, and all your data and the client data is basically European Union clients, and your foreigners are from European Union, how you handle that data can be subject to the GDPR or the European Union regulations, right? So it's cross-boundary regulations can be enforced now. So it's a very sensitive area. It's very there's a gray area in the regulations as well. So obviously the legal expertise is also not up to the standard of other domains. So it's not that easy to prove a certain piece of data was residing in a certain location. So these kind of things are quite up for debate at the moment, but it's been thoroughly discussed and articulated in the industry so that everyone is aware of what are the regulations and what regulations do they have to follow. So most companies in Sri Lanka, they tend to always adhere to these GDPR level regulations because most of their clients are from the European Union. So that gives you an idea about how organizations are following these regulations. And the other side of the story is, of course, it's not always about regulatory requirements. It's not always about law. Sometimes the security standards. I can give you a very quick example. The Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, or PCI DSS, is a good example. These standards are not mandated by law, right? However, the implementation of them is required if you want certain vendors or third parties to interact with your systems. One good example is if you are having a e-commerce website, right? And that e-commerce website is basically open to all your clients to purchase certain products. However, you need the service of, let's say, Visa or MasterCard. They would not provide you the service unless you have this PCI DSS compliance, right? So that's sort of like that's like a standard requirement that you have to adhere to so that you can interact with third parties. So that's another interesting side of these standards other than regulations. Regulations would also, of course, it's not all about data privacy and protection. Sometimes the new regulations, especially the Cybersecurity Act of Sri Lanka, if it becomes a law, it will actually put a lot of burden on many organizations to make sure the cybersecurity infrastructure is properly protected, right? So infrastructure is properly protected because there needs to be a proper incident response plan. There needs to be incident reporting mechanisms. There needs to be cybersecurity in charge. A certain amount of employees with certain qualifications are needed. Why is it important? Because it is an act, therefore it is a law. In violation of that, in breach of that, you are liable for penalties, right? So currently it's been discussed whether it could go to criminal offences or the punitive justice. That aspect is currently being discussed, and it's been obviously it will be part of the penal code to decide what will be the punishments. But there is always going to be a legal liability. Definitely there will be a financial liability, right? So if something bad goes on, maybe your customers can sue you, right? Your customers can take you to court, and you will be in huge trouble with respect to that. And it's not just legal liability, it's the reputation at stake, right? It's a reputation at stake. I think Mr. Amila touched upon this. So obviously every company that is facing a cybersecurity incident, of course, their reputation is at stake, right? Because if it becomes public knowledge, then your customer confidence go down. So this is the reason why, I mean, you must have most of who are here must have seen, like, when a company is advertising their systems, they even say we are ISO certified, this and that certification, right? So the main idea behind that is to gain the customer confidence, obviously, right? So gain the customer confidence. So with respect to that is the impact on businesses. The impact on individuals, I would say it is mainly privacy. Privacy is probably the most discussed topic element when it comes to legal landscape, because laws are there. The personal data protection regulation of Sri Lanka is to protect our privacy as citizens. What our data can be, like what type of our data can be held by a third party, what can they do with it, what cannot they do with it, right? If they are informing about if they're informing us about sending our data to a third party, they need to let us give the option to opt in or opt out of those things. So these are privileges that we are going to get as a result of these regulations. And not only that, data breaches. So if some security incident happens, if a data breach happens, there is a mandatory notification requirement. So every client, every customer would get to know about it, right? And they get to decide what to do with the that particular incident. So this is a quite interesting turn of events with respect to what is going to happen in the future. So finally speaking, how can organizations, let's say, stay up to date with it? How can they adhere to it? Well, they need to be, of course, informed about it. So I mean, if you don't know a law has been passed, if you know a regulation has been passed, you are already behind, right? So they have to be informed about it. And then in cybersecurity, there is a concept called risk assessments. So continuous periodical risk assessments will tell you what are your weak points. Fixing those weak points will automatically make sure that you are anyway adhering to these regulations. So that's quite important. And most organizations have their own compliance programs. So compliance programs include, doing audits and checking certain things are in right places at the right time. So those are the things that I can highlight upon. I could go on with, other elements like, awareness of employees and, hiring legal counsels. These are like basic things. But other than that, the organizations, basically, they need to be aware of the legal implications, right? They need to know what will happen to them if they do not follow certain things. As long as they know that, I'm pretty sure they will be motivated to implement the rest of the things that I discussed. So I hope I touched upon the things that you asked me.
Yes, of course, sir. Thank you, sir. Moving on to the next question. Mr. Amila, can you explain how does SDNs, which refer to as software-defined networks, influence cybersecurity? What are the key security challenges and considerations, and how can organizations effectively secure evolving landscape?
Okay, so considering the available time, let me make it a bit shorter. So this SDNs or software-defined networks actually significantly influence cybersecurity because it presents both opportunities and challenges. And if we look at the positive influences, due to SDN. Now, if you are a bit familiar with software-defined networks, you will easily agree with what I say, because now when you go with centralized visibility and control is there. That is one of the huge advantages that you get when you go with software-defined networks. So this SDNs usually provide a single point of control over a large network. So maybe even your entire network, depending on number of segmentations you have. So which enables a better visibility into your network activities, and you will have the ability to quickly implement any security policies across all the devices in your network, right? So this makes it very easy for us to detect and to potential threats, quickly apply security policies, adapt to this threat changing threat landscape. So that's one of the plus points. And also SDN allows dynamic segmentation. Now, if you look at SDN networks, so it allows network segmentation, which allows you to create maybe mini isolated zones for different parts of your network. Now, usually in a traditional network, we'll have to use a lot of devices and in a SDN architecture, right? So this limits the lateral movement of attackers. And if they attack one network segment, it prevents them from accessing critical systems in other segments. So you can easily isolate these segments and take preventive measures or corrective measures. And also this micro segmentation, which allows you to go for more granular segmentation than this traditional segmentation of networks, right? Which provides even finer control over network access and further restrictions of potential damage during the attacks, like we discussed earlier, right? And also what goes with SDN is automation, right? So this most of the things that we manually did in a traditional network can be easily automated in a SDN architecture. So now, if you all are familiar with SDN implementation, most of the people doing SDN implementations try to automate certain security tasks such as threat detection, incident response, which makes the network more agile and responsive to this evolving security threats actually. And if I move on to the challenges and the things to be considered when you are dealing with SDN, one of the biggest challenges that we have is this SDNs increase the attack surface. So even though we took the centralized control plane of SDN as a key point, key advantage, it also presents a potential attractive target for attackers, right? So securing this central control point is important to avoid compromising the network due to network attacks and all. And also management complexity. Now, when it comes to managing and configuring when it comes to managing and configuring SDN security, it requires specialized skills and knowledge. Not everybody is familiar with SDNs. Even SDN is evolving technology at the moment. It's kind of considered as emerging technology. Not every professional into networking domain is well familiar with this. So organizations will have to definitely invest a lot of money on training their employees to effectively utilize SDN security benefits actually. And also when it comes to integrating with existing systems, there are a lot of challenges, right? And if we only focus on security, so integrating with existing security tools that we already use for our traditional networks, and also the integrating it with the existing network infrastructure can be a very challenging and a complex task, which requires very careful planning and implementation, right? And so since this is a new technology, another key disadvantage that comes with SDN is there may be vulnerabilities that can be easily exploited by others, right? So this is common to any new technology. This is nothing specifically available for SDN. when there's a new technology, there's a higher chance of identifying vulnerabilities in those and exploiting them. So SDN is also susceptible to vulnerabilities that attackers can exploit. As a result, it can lead to various problems for organizations managing their networking infrastructure through SDN. So the solution for that is staying updated and going with latest security patches and doing it promptly is what I can recommend actually. So if you look at how we can effectively secure networks in SDN environment, so we'll have to always consider this security by design when it comes to SDNs. So what I meant by that is you will have to consider implementing security from the very beginning of the SDN design and implementation process. That is important because you can't first implement the SDN architecture and your network components, design and implement it, and then later on consider security, which will be very difficult and will not be perfect for sure. Right? So you'll have to go with this principle of security by design if you are going with SDN. And also securing the control panel is the most important thing. We already said that one of the plus points is that centralized control that we get through the SDN controller, centralized SDN controller. But securing that is also important because if it gets compromised, that can lead to failure in all the segments in your network. Right? So implementing a very robust security measures such as multi-factor authentication, proper access control mechanisms for the SDN control is very important. And also you will have to consider implementing that micro segmentation rather than traditional segmentation because that divides the network into smaller, more isolated segments that will limit the potential impact due to a security breach. Since the technology is new, there can be vulnerabilities that attackers can easily identify. Even if something like that happens, this micro-segmentation will help you to limit that impact of the security breach. And you will have to definitely consider utilizing automated this automating the security tasks that you have. Right? So this is common for any like domain now, but since SDN is something that we are considering seriously when it comes to secure network infrastructure, from the beginning of it, considering to automate certain security tasks that we have been doing manually in traditional networks is important. Right? So there are many automation tools that you can utilize to do threat detection, incident response, to improve the efficiency and the responsiveness of your network infrastructure. And also we'll have to focus on continuous monitoring and analysis of these threats coming into your network. And as I said, for cloud security, here also have providing proper user awareness and training for your employees and other stakeholders is also important, right? So especially you will have to ensure that IT personnel involved with implementing and managing your SDN infrastructure is very skillful and knowledgeable to manage security in the SDN infrastructure. And you will have to always, like in any domain of security, you will have to always stay updated on vulnerabilities. So if by addressing all these challenges and implementing effective security practices, any organization can leverage the benefits of SDN for a more secure and a resilient network infrastructure. So remember, now in cybersecurity, SDN is an ongoing process. It's not just one-time job. You will have to keep on doing things like continuous, such as continuous security assessments, adaptations, and innovations to stay ahead of this evolving security threats actually. So I hope I have answered the questions being asked by you.
Of course, sir. Thank you, sir. Moving on to the next question. Dr. Harinder, can you explain how can the integration of AI and data science contribute to more effective cyber risk prevention strategies. What specific role do these technologies play in identifying and mitigating potential threats in ever evolving landscape of cybersecurity?
Right. So now I think one fundamental thing is AI is not just going to help mitigate, it will also lead to more attacks and more types of attacks, because AI is just a tool, right? So like any tool, it can be used either way. And it started being used as a tool for defense, but again, more and more recently, we are seeing it being used as a means of mounting threats. So to get back to the main question, so AI fundamentally has two main advantages. One advantage is AI allows you to analyze massive amounts of data which would otherwise be nearly impossible to analyze by kind of manual methods. Now, this kind of automated data analysis specifically leads itself to some very specific use cases when it comes to cybersecurity. For example, one of the biggest challenges we faced for multiple decades was how to identify DDoS attacks, right? Distributed denial of attacks was the bane of the internet for a very long time, and there was actually no efficient means of identifying and isolating DDoS attacks because of the nature of the attack. The nature of the attack was you flooded the target with millions or billions of packets, and the use case meant somebody had to analyze that huge amount of information to then figure out which of these are the attack packets, right? So before AI, this was nearly impossible. But now, using AI, it is relatively simple task to identify DDoS attacks. Identifying is easy, but again, mitigating has its own set of challenges. So it's still a very fundamental threat in the internet landscape. But we were able to do something that was nearly impossible or unheard of for about 30 to 40 years. How do we look at this huge flood of packets and figure out which of these packets are attack packets and which are not? A fundamental question which now can be answered very easily. So similarly, certain areas like network detection, malware analysis, even software security, due to the nature of the problem, which is analysis of huge amounts of data to find very subtle patterns, leads itself very efficiently to machine learning models, right? So because of that, what we are seeing is machine learning is being leveraged in a lot of areas to identify or to kind of mitigate issues, right? So for example, machine learning is commonly used in analyzing logs, right? Again, a big challenge was like you could have logs. You could have very detailed logs even, in databases, but the challenge wasn't the logs. The challenge was going through all those logs to figure out what were the problems. This can be easily done with proper AI models, very easily. Automatically it happens, and in real time you will get, this has happened very easily. Previously you had, entire teams of junior interns manually going through this to figure out what is going on, what is the attack, and they were obviously, you need a cheap labor, but then cheap labor is not good. So obviously it wasn't happening very well. So it was a kind of a very bad situation. Now log analysis is mostly AI based, right? Similarly, lot of malware detection, network intrusion detection, network intrusion prevention, software security, analyzing vulnerabilities. All of this now is being leveraged by AI to make it a lot more efficient, make it a lot more powerful, and make it able to happen in real time. So that is going to continue. And of course, over time, there will be new types of architectures. There will be new types of AI algorithms, which will lead to different types of data being able to be analyzed efficiently, and more defenses will come in. But the bad side is same as the good guys. The defenders are using AI. We are seeing now attackers are beginning to leverage AI to also kind of explore new vulnerabilities. So same way, a defender can use an AI model to identify vulnerabilities in the code. An attacker can use the same kind of AI to find maybe vulnerabilities that they could not identify before, or to analyze much bigger chunks of code than they were able to do before. So therefore, the attack vectors are also being increased due to the use of AI. In addition, some very dangerous types of attacks. Right now, I talked about a specific type of side channel attack. Now, there are other side channel attacks which are being used now. Previously, we had attacks that used keyboard hooks, right? So what used to happen was there would be malware that would be installed on your PC, and that would hook, that's why it's called a keyboard hook, that would kind of intercept your keystrokes. And this allowed people to steal passwords, this allowed people to steal usernames, etc. Now AI can be leveraged to, to listen to somebody typing and then figure out what they typed, right? So you don't need software to be installed. Your colleague could use their phone to record you typing and then figure out what you type using AI. Similarly, there are now attacks coming out which use CPU heat and CPU power draw to run it through AI models to figure out what are the integers being generated for PRNG reasons for encryption, right? So they can again bypass all the software and the mechanisms that are used to protect it. And by monitoring your CPU's heat draw and its power draw, it can figure out what is the key that was just generated for RSA or AES, right? So again, this is just the start because these are still constrained by physical proximity. But I'm sure over time, people will figure out ways to develop these kind of attacks that can be run remotely, right? And again, these kind of attacks are being used to bypass Faraday cages right now. Again, for people who don't know, Faraday cages are used for what we say completely isolated systems. Certain very high security systems do not have network connections. They are completely isolated or off the grid from the system, right, to stop network attacks. So these kind of attacks, again, these are not common attacks. These are, like government level attacks, military spies, that kind of attacks. These kind of attacks can be leveraged to kind of figure out what is the processing being done by a computer behind a Faraday cage, by a spy, right? So again, these are very niche attacks at the moment, but it is my belief with the development of AI and the way AI is going, in the future, we will see more and more of these kind of attacks, which will lead to more threat vectors or an increase in the threat surface of systems, which we can't even predict now. So we have to be careful of how AI progresses because it's not just, again, another thing is bypassing of biometric verification, right? A lot of biometric verification is very strong at the moment. But now we have generative adversarial GANs networks, which can for example, voice, you can use to modulate your voice using AI to sound like somebody else. This is done already. Deepfakes are there. But I'm sure the next step would be a person using a generative adversarial network to forge their voice print to bypass voice recognition. This can already be done with fingerprints. This has been shown. I'd say the next step would be voice prints, right? And then face recognition, it will be slightly more difficult because of the nature of it. But I'm sure in the future, there will be ways you can use a screen to kind of generate a face that is similar to mine to show to a camera, which will then kind of allow the camera to kind of bypass the face recognition, facial recognition, right? So all these kind of attacks are going to start coming out, is my belief. So we have to be careful in how we use AI, how we use it for defense, how we use it for offense, and we need to be aware it can be used for both and be kind of mindful of that fact. Yeah, I think I'm not going to take long because I think we are running out of time now. So that's about it for me for the AI side of cybersecurity and the potential threats and kind of defenses.
Thank you, sir, for that insightful answer, sir. Moving on to next question. Mr. Kavinga, can you explain how does cybersecurity contribute to the commercial value of businesses today? What are the risks of neglecting cyber security, and how does investing in robust measures impact overall success?
Right. So that's actually we sort of answered some of those points already. I think myself and Amila's answers encompass some of these ideas. But commercial value, as per se, as I already mentioned, if you are investing heavily on cybersecurity, that will this is what we call this term called ROCE, or return on security investment. It's very hard to gauge, but there are things. So obviously, customer confidence and reputation heavily depends on how much secure your architecture is. So your systems are. So more customer confidence means reputation means, of course, more business. So there's a financial element to it. And then the other side of the story is your obviously security is important to protect your sensitive information of the organization. So that includes your customer data and your internal business data, and also your intellectual property, right? So if it is a research environment, maybe that research data, and if it is like a car manufacturing company, maybe the latest design of their next vehicle, for example. So those are intellectual property, and your protection of those things are very important. So obviously the commercial value lies within that. And the other, of course, thing is, if you commercial value is there when you show to your customers, when you show to your clients that your security is one of your topmost priorities, obviously that gives you a competitive advantage over your competitors, and suddenly you become more attractive than probably your competitor. So there is a major commercial advantage in investing cybersecurity. And if you don't invest on it, there are risks attached to it. Of course, that is the other side of the coin, which is you will lose your data, you will have many financial losses, drop off your customers, reputational damage, and there is quite a lot of things. And as I previously mentioned, yes,
just to mention, in the future, most probably you will be fined by the government for breaking the regulations.
I was just coming to that, and in my previous answer, I mentioned about the regulatory and the legal landscape that is coming up, that is basically covering the entire sphere. Once that comes, the legal consequences will be very damaging, because we don't know how much the penalties are going to be in local context as well as global context. So legal consequences will be huge, along with any cybersecurity attack. Dr. Harinder touched upon DDoS attacks and DOS attacks for companies that could result in downtime. Downtime means money, right? So for any company, downtime is equal to money. So that is obviously a major risk of neglecting cybersecurity in a corporate environment. I think those are the key points, and the rest of the elements I think we already discussed during our previous answers, I guess.
Yes, of course. Moving on to the final question, Mr. Amila, as AI advances in cybersecurity, which traditional jobs do you think will be replaced, and how can professionals adapt to this change in landscape?
Actually, I think everyone can contribute to this question. So I can think of many roles that will be replaced with the advancement of artificial intelligence and AI-based solutions being developed in security sector. Right now, just to give you a few examples, others can also contribute to this. They can add more roles that will be replaced due to this new advancements in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and related technologies. Now, so something that most of us are well familiar with these days is SOC operations, right? So there's a routine threat analysis and incident response task associated with it, right? So there's a role called security analyst. So they often perform this routine threat analysis and incident response tasks. But these AI tools can automate the detection of common threats and also streamline incident response. Because of that, that job role will very soon go away. So it's already happening. Some of these advanced security software solutions being used in software environments, including SIEMs, and EDRs and so on, already have this capability actually to a certain extent, right? There are like some tools with very high capabilities, but also expensive. Because of that, third world countries are like yet to adapt to those solutions.
Yeah, I think Camilla, so tier 1, tier maybe even up to tier 2 levels of analyst roles will most likely fade away.
Yes, it's already happening actually. Now they are not into the traditional role, even if you are working in a SOC environment. So you all are not doing the same things that you did earlier, because of some part of your job is already taken over by these AI components which can automate these tasks, right? So the adaptation that you will have to do is, so if you are a security analyst, you can focus on more complex threat intelligence analysis, strategic planning kind of things, and how you do collaborations with these AI systems to enhance overall security posture of the organization. So you will have to focus on such aspects. And also we do a lot of rule-based security monitoring when it comes to cyber security, right? So if you look at industry, like there are many security professionals responsible for role-based security monitoring, in especially in the infrastructure sector, right? So this can be automated, right? So rule creation as well as monitoring can be easily automated with the AI systems, right? So this advantage of AI system is the AI systems can analyze vast amount of data in real time, unlike humans manually doing it. And also they can easily correlate them, identify patterns that may be challenging for humans to detect, right? So what we can do to adapt to this as professionals is, so we can like basically involved in overseeing AI systems. One thing is you can develop such AI systems, you can manage such AI systems to get the results you need. And also sometimes there may be a need of a human touch to refine the rules to cater the exact requirements that we have, right? So for that humans can involve. And also we can support these AI systems in interpreting complex threat scenarios, which they are not trained for, right? So always, as humans, we can provide intuition and context into such systems to understand these complex threat scenarios. And also, now not many people not many people will agree with me, but the way I see it, traditional vulnerability assessment and penetration testing will definitely go away. I don't know whether other panel members will agree with me, but the reason for saying that is already there are so many tools, AI powered tools, which can easily automate certain aspects of vulnerability assessments and penetration testing.
Definitely.
Right? So as professionals, what we can do is we can specialize in conducting in-depth assessments and more into this offensive side of it, like ethical hacking, or analyzing very complex security vulnerabilities, which requires human creativity and problem solving skills, right? So that is where you can play a role. Yes,
I think a lot of times what people will have to expect is they have to move away from doing the manual tasks to doing the higher level analysis, right? So not you do the vulnerability testing, the report will come, but you will have to spend some time to interpret that report and figure out how best, what does this mean? Because maybe that will also change maybe in another 5-6 years, but still AI is not able to do that. So it can automate the report creation, but the report analysis at a higher level, that still you need the human, but you need a higher, much higher level thinking skills and capabilities to work at that level. And that is going to be the reality going forward. What is going to happen is jobs are not going to be lost. Jobs are going to evolve, right? What is the expectation of the skill set to do jobs are going to significantly change, right? Same will happen with software engineering. There will not be the concept of junior software engineers who sit down and write code in another 3-4 years.
So it will be a matter of how quickly you are adaptable to AI assisted tools, basically. So as long as you have the capability to be dynamic with that, then I guess your job will be secure, but the role will be quite, it will be gray. So we don't know what it will be.
Yes. And since I mentioned about the SOC analyst, now students for the internships and also part-time jobs, they are into this SOC operations and all. So if you look at it from this perspective, like you can hunting kind of things, incident coordination and responding to sophisticated threats, which definitely requires human touch and expertise. Right. So like Dr. Harinder correctly mentioned, it's not like we are not going to get rid of those jobs. Those jobs are evolving. The things that you do are going to be different and more advanced. And also like since you asked this question, what kind of job roles will be affected by this? Also be affected by that is already happening. So there are a lot of AI driven chatbots and automation in inquiries and incidents, right? So they can now professionals can consider specializing in more complex cybersecurity tasks, moving to higher tier support roles, or transition into areas where human communication and understanding is crucial, actually. So this is also happening in support, like environments where support services are provided and all, especially when it comes to network infrastructure as well. Right. And the last part of your question was how professionals can adapt to this challenging landscape. So obviously one thing that we will have to do is continuous learning and upskilling. So stay up to date on emerging technologies, including AI and cybersecurity trends. So one way to get that covered is doing latest certifications and get into latest training programs, which allows you to acquire these skills. And also you will have to consider specializing into niche areas, right? So there are a lot of niche areas which needs human expertise, creativity, and critical thinking. Even though these AI-based solutions are there, they are not into the level of replacing all the or like doing all these tasks yet, right? And so you can always focus on roles that involve strategic planning, policy development, and advanced threat analysis, right? And so the one good thing that you can do is collaboration with AI systems. So learn how to work with these AI systems and leverage their capabilities to get your work done.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, it's some types of tools that these attendees might be interested. You can search about SOAR solutions. We call them security orchestration and automation solutions. These are already using threat intelligence to do certain AI assisted activities. If you are an expert in using those type of SOAR tools, I think you are already ahead of the game.
Yes, very true. And like Dr. Harinder mentioned, we'll have to develop the skills in interpreting AI generated insights and integrate them into decision making process. That is what we will have to do in the future, right? AI will do all the routine tasks, so we'll have to get those insights, properly interpret them, and consider them when we are making decisions, right? And also, you can always improve your soft skills, communication skills, and other things that you can improve. And so people into technical aspects, technical security aspects knows this well. So when it comes to offensive security side, we always likes to master this ethical hacking, red teaming kind of skills, which can be useful because if you look at red teaming and offensive security roles, usually that requires a very deep understanding of cybersecurity vulnerabilities, creativity, and problem solving skills. I don't think AI solutions are up to the level of uh, taking of all these roles. And also, we will always need human experts to handle cybersecurity related management and governance. So transition into roles involved in this management, governance, and policy development is also one strategy that we can go with to secure our jobs, right? So these are the things that I see. So if there's anything else to be added to this, Dr. Harindra and Mr. 𝚑𝗏𝗏 can do that.
I
think yeah, most of the things I think you touched upon. So AI, we will just have to learn to live with it, I guess, and adapting is going to be the biggest challenge. So you have to be dynamic, and automatically, I think you will figure out what you will be doing.
Yeah, I totally
Actually,
agree.
I just like to share something. When we are talking about this, I was trying to figure out whether I could find that email. So this is a very good example of what's happening with AI, right? So this is a remote job, assessment specialist, which is education. And what they are asking for are educators who you are able to create the prompts for generative AI to create the assessments, right? Experience with generative AI, particularly in crafting complex prompts, and experience creating content for standardized education tests. So you can see how AI is bleeding into every field, right? So this is asking for people who are educators, but what the main skill set is not how much they know or how much they know education, how well they can use AI to create the questions automatically, not write the questions from scratch, right? So this kind of change is going to happen in any field, regardless of where you are. So AI is going to become a very common tool. Whatever you are doing in the future, you will be required to use AI as a common tool. And if you can't use AI and you can't use it well and properly and then interpret how it's doing that job, you will struggle to keep a job.
Yes, sir, I totally agree with you, sir. With that question, we came to the end of this session. I think, ladies and gentlemen, you have gained something from this discussion. And over to you, Mithila.
Thank you, Anuradha. So as we are running short of time, we will unfortunately only be able to discuss one of the participants' questions for the Q&A. So the question directed at the panel is, what role do quantum key distribution systems play in securing communication channels against quantum attacks, and what are their current limitations?
I think I'll take that question since I brought up this quantum key distribution concept. So as I said, it's still at research level, but the idea of quantum key distribution is mainly to utilize the power of quantum computing to do a establishment of a key, a secure long enough key, so that the receiver and the sender would establish a key without any other party being involved, without any other party knowing. And the key is long enough so that it is resistant against any sort of a quantum level attack. So QKD is obviously going to give us the ability to establish the key. what we do after establishing the key is already something that we are doing, which is symmetric branch of the encryption, which is not going to be a problem, because as long as we increase the difficulty or the complexity of brute force and various other attacks, the symmetric element of our day-to-day encryption will be still safe. So as far as the secure communications of our day-to-day transmissions or those things, we don't have to worry about it. QKD actually is going to replace the asymmetric cryptography branch of what we know as of today, which is RSA and Diffie-Hellman, and those protocols will be replaced. Remember, QKD is not the only solution. There are various other solutions that have been explored by researchers. I hope I answered that question.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, so it is now time to give away the tokens of appreciation to our guests as we reach the end of our session. First of all, it is with great honor and appreciation that we present this token of appreciation to Mr. 𝐂𝐲𝐋𝐵. We extend our sincere gratitude for dedicating your valuable time and expertise as a speaker in our CyberShield 3.0 event. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, guys. Happy to help.
Next, with sincere gratitude, we present this token of appreciation to Mr. Amilasena Ratna. Sir, we express our heartfelt thanks for dedicating your valuable time and sharing your expertise as a speaker in our event.
Thank you very much.
And finally, it is with deep appreciation and gratitude that we present this token of appreciation to Dr. 𝚙𝚎 Sir, we extend our sincere thanks for dedicating your valuable time and sharing your expertise as a speaker at CyberShield 3.0.
You are welcome, everyone, and thanks for the invitation.
So here's a thrilling chance for our school participants present today. We are holding a contest for you to write articles on cybersecurity, and this is your opportunity to contribute any thoughts or insights that you may have. So don't miss out on this opportunity, and we look forward to seeing your entries. To enter this competition, all you have to do is scan the QR code on your screen right now, or we provide a link in the chat. So please do visit that link if you are interested in this competition. As we conclude today's engaging session, we are excited to give you a sneak peek into our next session, scheduled for tomorrow, the 18th of January. The topic is cyber hygiene, attacker mentality, and soft skills. So join us as we delve into the aspects of maintaining cyber hygiene, understanding the mindset of potential attackers, and exploring the essential soft skills needed in the cybersecurity landscape. So make sure you register using the link on our flyer, which will be distributed shortly, and don't miss out on this session, and also make sure that you invite your friends along as well. We look forward to having you for another enlightening session. So before moving on to our next item on the agenda, I'd like to make a few announcements. For those of you who are streaming the session through YouTube, we have uploaded an attendance form to the chat. So please ensure you fill it and in order to make yourselves eligible to the certificate, which will be awarded to you at the end of our workshop series only if you've attended all 3 sessions of our series. And for those of you connected through Teams, there's another link to a feedback form available on the chat. So please make sure that you take some time to fill out that form, as we'd love to hear your thoughts on this session. And of course, as per customs, we'd love to capture a virtual moment with all of you present here today. So I would like you all to turn on your cameras so that we could create a collective snapshot of our engaging time together.
I think participants stopped from turning on their cameras with the settings. Are we finished? Shall we wrap up?
Yeah, I think we're done, Dr. Harinder. Good night, everyone, and thanks for joining.
Good night, sir. Good night, everyone.
Right.
So guys, in order to stay up to date with what we've got planned for the future, make sure you follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well.